This is League Magazine. I'm Sanzu, and with me is Peter Dager, aka PPD of Evil Geniuses. You just took a very easy-looking win of 2-0 over. Well, okay, the first game didn't look as easy, but we'll get to that. Yeah, so you just beat VG Gaming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I had this feeling like they play very aggressive, and the best way to deal with that aggression is to for example, like Empire did at D2CL, you go really aggressive as well, and then if you take control of the game, they're not that good at getting back into the game once they're behind. But you chose in the first game to play what felt like a very late game focused draft. Like you had a lot of cores and that you farmed up and so forth. What was the thinking in that draft? Did you feel comfortable that you're just that much better right now as a team that you can just go late game against them?
I do think we're the better team right now, but they played really well early game, and we made a couple of big mistakes, and we weren't able to be as aggressive in the early game as we probably wanted to, which led to us kind of more or less dodging team fights and just farming up Aoi on Naga and getting the Radiance, and then eventually an Octarine core and just more and more items.
Yeah, so it was more like just adapting to the game. What do you feel like? Were they not able to adapt in turn, or did you feel like after you made those changes mid-game that they really didn't have an answer at that point?
I'd like to think that we made the game very hard for them, and we made the right moves to to have a victory. But like it's just Dota. They probably made a couple mistakes. We made a couple mistakes. They had a couple of opportunities that almost worked out for them. They had a push mid where they almost killed Sumail when he didn't have buyback. That would have been really good for them. Luckily, we were able to save him with Naga's song of the whatever it's called.
Yeah, the Song of the Siren was really strong. For example, I remember there was a Earthshaker initiation at top lane where it was just really beautiful how closely you guys played it to the edge, and then just comes in the Song of the Siren, saves the whole team, back off, reset the fight, and that seemed like they weren't as good at sort of working out how to back out of fights. But like going into game 2, you got the Clinks again, and Fear just went ham. This Clinks, we don't see it that much. Is this something that you'd specifically thought of practicing before this tournament? What's going into that pick?
Sure. We actually didn't practice it too much before this tournament, but I think that's just because we're pretty comfortable with the hero and what he does. It's one of Fear's favorite heroes in the past couple patches, and he hasn't really been nerfed or buffed too much. He just kind of works a little bit better in this meta than he has in previous metas. But yeah, he's really strong in both these games. They didn't have much lockdown on any of their heroes really, and first game didn't go exactly as planned, but the second game he was able to be what he wanted to be in the first game. It just didn't work out the first game.
Yeah, and that was very dominant. Now, I think it's fair to say that nobody really knows VG Gaming in terms of the Western scene as well as you guys do. You keep facing them again and again and again. They seem to be in such a slump. Do you have any theories? What do you feel has changed about them? What's the difference?
Well, they brought on Hal, so he's a brand new player, and of course, at the very beginning they looked a lot better, but they haven't really had as many victories as they had before, which is unfortunate. Also, teams are practicing a lot harder and taking the game a lot more seriously with TI approaching, so I think they probably just need to. I mean, they're still a great team, and I think that we did really well today, but maybe if they just step up their game a little bit more, they'll be ready for TI.
Yeah. And you also brought in 2 new players here, and I was looking at that sort of before you and Zai and RTZ came to EG, it was the past couple years have been a bit rough for EG. But you really took that team and you built it into a championship team. And then losing RTZ, losing Zai, sort of, it felt like it was a new rebuilding process again. Has it been, how have you looked at that? How is it building up this team compared to building up the previous team?
It was really unfortunate to lose both those guys. They were good friends, and we had a pretty good thing going. We were slumping a bit, and they just, we didn't really handle it that great as a team. But moving forward with this brand new team, we were really fortunate that C9 was releasing Aoi, and we found this NA Dota talent in Sumail. Every team's different, and you build them different ways. Sumail is very, very young, but he's very, very talented. So you got to be careful when you have such a young guy, because he doesn't have the mature attitude that an older player would have. So you kind of have to choose your battles here and there. You still got to let him do his own thing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, going into TI, there's a lot of talk about boot camps and so forth. I hear a lot of teams are coming over to NA. It's been a usual problem for you guys that the NA scene is a bit mixed, so you don't always get the best practice. Do you think this is going to really work in your favor going into TI, or does it maybe make you a bit more visible, a bit more predictable for the other teams as you practice?
I think that it's always better to get the practice rather than not practice and be kind of in the fog. That being said, I think we're probably going to spend 1 week of our boot camp on the East Coast so we can play for our Dota Pit tournament, which is online, and also practice against some European teams that aren't ready to come over to the U.S. And then after that, I think a lot of teams, maybe even a couple Chinese teams, are coming to California for a boot camp, and that'll be really nice because we have a house there and it will be very comfortable, and we're all very comfortable pretty much anywhere in the U.S. But if we had to go to Europe, we would. So I wouldn't say we'd be at a disadvantage.
So you guys don't seem to play Wisp a lot. What's going on there? It seems to be, it's pretty much a staple pick for almost all Western teams. So why isn't it really a part of your roster?
Ever since I started playing Dota a little over, probably about a year and a half ago, I've never really latched onto the hero. And even old EG, we didn't play that much Wisp, and new EG, we don't really play it that much either. We recognize that it's a great hero, and we see what other teams do, and we would love to play it. It just that doesn't really ever seem to work out. So I think we can still pick it and still play it in certain situations, but it's not a top pick for us. And I think we've learned how to play against it, and there's a lot of good heroes in the meta right now that we can use to beat it.
Well, going from that, I figure sort of it might fit better for you, you specifically, because you play these supportive, protective heroes. So playing it in the style of that mana battery, health battery style that started from SEA, and so that might fit you better. Do you think there might be some of that?
Yeah, it's definitely a defensive hero, and I actually can play it decently well to an acceptable level. But the biggest issue with our team is I usually play a very, very hard position 5, and Wisp doesn't really work too well with that. It works better when you have both your supports with kind of an equal, moderate amount of farm. Yeah. And usually you want your support to have some control or some offensive capabilities, and I generally play defensive capabilities. So if I'm not playing the Wisp and then I'm playing another defensive hero, we just don't really have what we need to secure a win.
This has been Elite Magazine, and if you like what we've been doing here at ESL One Frankfurt, you can find us at www.elitemag.com.
Like what you see? Why not subscribe to the magazine at elitemag.com?